few months ago, a man was arrested and put in prison for 2 years for, well, stickers in the United Kingdom. These stickers contained messages that were considered inciting racial hatred and stirring up racial hatred. This has caused some controversy and debate around if Sam Melia should be in prison. So who is Sam Melia and why has he been put in prison? So if you don't know who Sam Melia is, Sam Melia was a part of Patriotic Alternative, and he pretty much, what ended up happening was that he ended up putting up some flyers or some stickers that said things like it's okay to be white, small hats have big problems, and obviously there were a few other ones that would have been considered inciting racial hatred. And he was put in prison, or at least he was sentenced to 2 years in prison for inciting racial hatred, or some of the acts around at least what he was trying to at least put up around Leeds court, around him putting up all these stickers. And he got 2 years in prison for this, and even though he didn't necessarily, or even the courts at least, even came to a conclusion that Sam, or at least his flyers, didn't lead to actually anyone getting hurt or anyone getting injured. So this is just obviously, or would be considered a political prisoner due to his actions. I think as well this is a bit overkill, especially when it comes down to what has happened recently with Sam's case, where he isn't even allowed to see his children or even not talk about them, and he can't talk to anyone under the age of 18. This is because that at least when he went to Leeds prison, he's now been transferred to Hull prison, according to at least the Patriotic Alternative website. He's now been transferred there and he isn't allowed to see not even any of his 4-month-old daughter, Violet, because they've deemed him as someone who is, you know, literally risk to children, or he has been put down that as well. Which is a bit odd considering Sam hasn't actually done anything involving children or hasn't got a history with being, you know, violent or, you know, abusive to children. Sam's just got a very young daughter and he's trying to raise her, and he just really wants to see his young daughter that's been brought into this world. Sam is a decent man according to people that have been surrounding him. His wife said that he's a good husband and he, you know, really just wants to take care and look after his children. So it doesn't really make sense that they would put him on this list, and he's pretty much had to, what ended up happening was he had to sign a form, and I think as well his children or his partner have to sign a form where he has to write down and literally just put on all of this form to say that isn't a risk, and they basically send it to social services and then they go through the process of to see if Sam is actually a risk to children. So I think this is just really, to be honest, at least in my opinion, I think this is just to punish Sam for his behaviour. And even though I don't really agree with him putting up these stickers, because obviously leftists will just use this against him, of him staring at racial hatred, kind of like similar to, might have even bring up something like what with National Action did, or might have been inspired, or might have inspired an attack like what happened with Joe Cox. I do think that he shouldn't have really had this, and obviously this is very outrageous and disgusting of how the justice system in the UK has really treated Sam. Like, he's done nothing wrong, and yes, obviously I don't agree with the flyers, but, or at least people would say that putting this up would be used against him, but this is really just a violation of his rights. There is no way to treat a man who pretty much isn't a risk to children, and just pretty much just to strip him of, you know, his right to see his children, and can't even speak to the person who's over 18 about them. As well, this also impacts his freedom of speech. And if you don't know, there is actually speech and hate laws in the UK that if you are inciting racial hatred, you could essentially see a penalty or some type of, you know, fine that would be brought your way. And to do with the speech law, as you could basically say any racial slur as long as you want, just as long as you don't get people involved. And this is quite similar to a case like with codcomedytj that I've also talked about when I first started this channel, and he pretty much ended up getting attacked by the police and harassed, and also now even though he's in prison, he could potentially go to prison for inciting racial hatred. And this is kind of how the speech laws work. If you are inciting it and people are involved, then you could, you know, potentially go to prison for these crimes. And this is kind of what's happened with Sam, except Sam's gone into prison for 2 years, which is utterly and mostly ridiculous. And even with someone like TJ, who got off what people would consider pretty easy, he's still being punished and still can't really leave the United Kingdom. So anyway, hopefully you've enjoyed this video about me talking about Sam Melia and why he's been put in prison and how he's being punished even more after having these stickers, and why it's completely unfair and unjustified to impact his speech, and also why he shouldn't have really gone to prison, especially just because the flyers didn't actually cause anyone to get hurt. And as well, if you want to click on these videos where I've also talked about even more details on patriotic alternative and also other parts of politics, I'll talk about those a little bit more in detail. And before you click on this video, I actually have a link in the description below to my second channel or to my main channel where it has my link tree, where you can find my other channels and also my Discord as well.